Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And today, it's a brand new week. It's a great Monday. It is Monday, May 15th, 2023. And I've got a great guest lined up for us today. So let me introduce him. This is Coach John Geyston, also known as Hanshi John. He is a martial artist bursting with enthusiasm and passion. With an illustrious career spanning over 45 years, he has established himself as a highly accomplished 9th degree black belt in Nippon Ketsugo Ryu Kenpo-Jitsu, and in his final phase of black belt in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. During his active karate competition period from 1981 through 1996, he won numerous awards and 7 grand championships. He holds black belts in 5 karate styles and in his final phase of black belt in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. Throughout his 41 years of teaching martial arts, he has always strived for excellence and been dedicated to helping others learn and grow in the same way he has. He stands out as an accomplished martial artist who is passionate about passing on his vast knowledge of skill set to generations of students. He consistently seeks out opportunities to make meaningful change in the lives of others. He currently owns 3 martial arts academies. In addition, he has just finished 2 books, and I am very excited to have this opportunity and have this time with you today. So welcome, Mr. John Geyston.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. Like I said, we've known of you and you've known of me, but this is like the first time we've actually got to talk and meet. So I'm excited about that as well. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a great opportunity. You know, the technology has changed in a way that gives us this opportunity. And, you know, we have several friends in common, people that we travel in similar circles. And of course, above all, I mean, we're martial artists, right? And what I told you earlier before we started was that as I'm watching the things that you post on social media and your thought process and your growth mindset, I'm like, this is what we need. We need more of this on social media. We need more of this out in the world because it's so easy to fall into the doom and gloom and be a victim and have that mentality. So you have that winner's mindset, that growth mindset, and I love it. So I'm excited to learn more about you today. So if you could kind of start maybe just talking about, you know, I like to learn a little bit more about, you know, your childhood and how you grew up and parents, family, that kind of thing before we dive into the meat of, you know, the martial arts.
Yeah, because honestly, that kind of like led to where how this all came to be. It's you know, I had a little bit of a hard start in the beginning. I lost my father when I was 4 in a tragic car accident. And you know, my mom, they married young. My mom had me at 17. So here she is, 20, 21, 22, a single mom and with a 4-year-old and an infant. And, you know, high school, she didn't even graduate high school because she chose, you know, me over that. Right. So, you know, we moved a lot during that period of time and it was always in the same area on Springfield, Illinois. But I think by 4th grade, I was in 3 different grade schools. And, you know, and I was tiny. And when I say tiny, I'm talking about when the 1 month after my 10th birthday, I finally broke 50 pounds. So I was a little blonde-headed kid, shy and quiet, because every place I went, I was the new kid. And what was that? Well, that was the target for the bullies and the kids, right? So she put me in it. I was always interested in it because, you know, I'm much older, so much in the Kung Fu TV series and then Bruce Lee and all this. And I'm like, man, there was something about that, not the violence of it, but there was something about the confidence, I think, of that, right? And I was drawn to that. So, you know, she put me in that for a summer and it was terrible. It was terrible. I always tell people, you know, this was like the summer of 1972 and John Kreese looked like an angel compared to what the real teachers were in 1972. So I remember being hollered at. I remember being punched because I didn't give the stomach because I didn't ki-eye loud enough. You know, and I'm just like, I tried to tell my mom once, I said, you put me in karate to avoid these 3 kids that are going to beat me up. Now I got a full-grown man with a black belt beating me up. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So it wasn't my best experience by any means. But the value of that was, you know, I went back to school the following year and I still really didn't stand up for myself or anything. And this is I think this lesson that my mother did, I share this often, and I spoke about it at her funeral in 2009. And so, you know, I think in her mind, she prepared me to come back to school with confidence. I mean, I was at the point where I didn't want to go to school. My grades were dropping. You know, the typical stuff that happens, right, when you're in the being bullied phase. And these 3 kids are on me, and I'm doing as fast as you can get to the car without looking like you're running. Right. I'm going as fast as I can. And if this would be a perfect movie, because this would happen in slow motion. As I reach for the car door to get in on the passenger side, she reaches over and she locks it. And I'm thinking, the 3 kids are there. She stands up. She says, "Start standing up for yourself. Turn around and fight." Huh. And I'm like, you know, and I think about that now as a parent, how hard that had to be, because I don't think I could do that to my kids, you know. So, you know, I think that was when I look at that, that was probably the most powerful lesson I had in my entire life. It was, you may not win, but you're already losing because you're running. Just go for it. Just stand up for yourself and do what you believe in. So, you know, I like to share that story because I think really that right there is what put me to the mindset that I have today, was that little lesson then. You know, I didn't think that when she locked me out of the car door. What are you, nuts?
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's kind of a great way to kind of kick things off and get things going. And by the way, I just want to remind everybody that's watching, as you see me looking down, I'm taking lots of notes here as we go through. And, you know, one of the things that I wrote down right away is that your father died at an early age. You said age 4, right?
Yeah, I was 4, yes. Yeah.
What was it like growing up without a dad, or did you have someone else step into that father figure role, or an older brother, or how did that transpire?
Yeah, I mean, I felt it was always tough. I felt awkward because it was like on the baseball team, you had dad stand on the fence trying to tell you what to do. I didn't have that, you know.
Right.
It was, I just always, what's your father do for a career, when it would be that talk, and it was just, you know, I just felt awkward. I didn't feel like I had that. And we lived with my grandparents on and off, basically, but probably more on than off. You know, my mom would do best that she could to be independent and do things, but financially and job wise, we didn't back up with my grandparents. So, you know, I can really say that, you know, I probably grew up with my grandparents from 4 to 9, and my mom remarried. But, you know, at that point, it's my uncle on my mom's side, Uncle Bob. I call him Bubs. He was always there, and it probably was more of a mentor as I got older. And you know, then my cousins Johnny and Jimmy, they were there. So everybody tried to. My grandpa tried to be that person, right? So there was good people always around me trying to do that. But I think in the reality of it is you know, growing up, I had there was resentment maybe as I got older, that I never had that life with you know, a father figure, you know, where everybody else had one and I didn't. So I felt maybe cheated. And I think that carried in junior high and my freshman year specifically. I remember being in trouble a lot, and it always focused around me resenting anybody that was critical of me in an authority figure, because I felt I was being judged. And then I would want to fight back and resist, you know. And I know, God bless my principal in high school. I know the guy had to despise every inch of me. My freshman year, and sophomore it got a little bit better. And I remember him coming up to me my senior year, and you know, then I'm an honor roll student. Junior, senior year, you know, I got my act together. However, someone shaped it. And I remember he put his arm around me. He said, "If I didn't have kids of my own, I would send you to college because you're the best debater I've ever met. And I would send you to law school because you'd be an amazing attorney." So that was his way of saying how much, he goes, "We really came a long way, and I have to tell you how much I respect you." So that was a cool thing. So, you know, I think that, you know, early on that was the shy kid part, and then later on there was the resentment coming out from that. So I do think it shaped me a lot, and I think I think it's one of the reasons too why karate became something, because it does become an extended family.
Right.
You have sensei, the mentor, teacher. You know, and that was where I found where people were interested in me if I did well, right? So I want to continue doing well. So
yeah. Now, you know, 17 was young for your mom, right? But maybe in those years, maybe that's not so young, because I know my mom was 18 when she had me, or actually I believe maybe 19. But you know, teen moms. How was your relationship with your mom growing up, being, relatively closer in age as to, maybe some of your friends, their parents had them when they were 30,
Yeah.
and it's a different dynamic, right?
Yeah.
What was that dynamic with you and your mom?
Yeah, it was always good. It was always close. I used to joke, and I could murder somebody, and she'd be the first person to help me cover the body up somewhere and try to cover for me. Right? I could do no wrong in her eyes, and even when I was wrong, but the relationship was very good, and I think, and I'm confident from conversations with her that we ended up shaping the son that she thought I could be. So, but we had a very good relationship. She, is probably my number one fan, right? I could not do any wrong, almost to a fault that I
Right.
could do wrong, right? So,
Now, brothers, sisters, siblings?
yes, I have a brother and a sister. Yeah. Now, a sister from my father, and then a stepbrother from when my mother got remarried when I was 9. So,
Gotcha. And so we talked about, you were bullied in school a bit, and
Mhm.
that changed over time. Did you play sports? Were you involved in activities?
I loved baseball, and I was not near as good as my love for the game was. Um, but I really truly enjoyed it. And then I ran track, and I think the track, it worked for me well. One, I described to you earlier how small I was, right? And I would just run all the time, and no one then was teaching you any techniques on how to run, or anything like that. So it wasn't like, hey, we're gonna keep our arms together, or, aerodynamics or however. There
Right.
wasn't no technique to it, but I did really, I did very well in that. I was freshman year, I ran varsity track and took second in the sectionals in varsity as a freshman. So I did real well in the 100 and the 220. So
Nice.
yeah.
And then you got into karate. Your mom put you in karate in 72. Was that the
Yeah,
year?
so I did it when I was the summer of my birthday's in August. So I did it that summer before my birthday, in between school. So I was 9, and then did it again. I dabbled around a little bit just because as I said, it just wasn't a comfortable setting to learn then, right? It was if you're being bullied and you're small, that setting at that time wasn't the best for it. But I was still, for some reason, there was something that attracted me to martial arts, and the mystique of it, the confidence that every person had, or at least portrayed in the movies. So I wanted that. And I wanted that peacefulness and that calm and that with it. So I got back in it when I was 15. The experience wasn't much better then, and I did that for about 18 months. And I was so terrible. I tell people all the time, I was so bad. And that instructor we never got along at all. And I was never disrespectful. The guy was just like, he was John Kreese in every sense of the word. And we just never connected. And in 18 months, I never even got a tip on my white belt. That's how bad. I always tell people, you want to talk about being bad? I never got a stripe at 18 months. So yeah. And then went to a community college. I was going to go into law enforcement. I was out at Lincoln Land Community College, which was a 2-year community college in Springfield. And walking by, and I noticed this in the afternoons from where my history class was, down the hall from that, there was always people in gis. And I nearly didn't watch a couple times. I'm like, I'm interested. And then one day it just happened that somebody was standing outside in the hallway, and I said, hey, what are you guys doing there? And that was it. I went in the following class, and from that day point, I can really say literally from that moment, once that hit, that third time was it. That was the third time was the charm.
Third time's the charm. Yeah.
I've probably done it a minimum of 5-6 days a week since then.
Wow.
And I'll 61 August 1st.
All right.
So that's a long run, right?
Yes, sir. That's awesome. That's inspiring for sure.
Yeah.
What was the first system, the school that you attended the first time? What was the system the second time? And then what about the third time?
Yeah, when I was 9, it was Goju Ryu.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Shoin Ryu when I was 15. And then the one that at the college was Shudokan. And that's, that would have been 1980, 81, 82. And I ended up earning my black belt in 85. So
that was the year that I started martial arts, was in 85.
Yeah.
Now,
you're younger, so.
Little bit. I saw a picture, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in your feed. I believe it was Superfoot and Joe Lewis and yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what year was that?
That I met Wallace and I brought him in. He was the very first person I brought to my school in 1987. I had this small little school in a town of 1,000 people. Yeah. And I brought him in for a seminar. And for some reason, we just, I was competing. I always wanted to kick. I was watching him on Wide World of Sports at that time fight, right? So that was 87. So from 87 on, and then that relationship just kept open. I would always go to seminars that he was doing. And then eventually met Joe Lewis through him in that. And in 97, I was doing, I was stunt fighting and had a small part in the movie The Cutoff of Michael D. Pasquale Jr. And I ended up getting to do the fight scene, and Joe Lewis kills me by breaking my neck. So it was kind of like a fun little staying in the group, and it was the same type of people, right? So, but yeah, I did a lot of stuff, kickboxing, and I would say it was heavily influenced. I always say that a lot of my teaching from going from that traditional karate instructor to being more who I am today probably was Wallace influence more. I'm like, here's a guy just having fun, training, and kicking people in the face. I want to do that. People in the face. So.
He was pretty good at kicking people in the face. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I still stay in touch with him, and right, the COVID, I used to run a gathering of the masters all the way up to time COVID. And we would still bring him in. So, and here he is, hip replacement and all that stuff, and still kicking like it's just amazing. He's an inspiration for sure.
Yeah, very cool. Now I'm looking at your bio, and accomplished 9th degree black belt in Nippon Ketsugo Ryu Kenpo-Jitsu. Is that a system that you learned or you developed?
No, that's a system that from my instructor, Larry Hilton. He was out of Peoria, and he retired due to health conditions probably around 2004, 2005. And then back in 2019, he was wanting to, his son was working in the medical field at this point. And just wasn't, he was like, hey, would you, and I said, I really don't want to run the system, and he got me when he said, you're the one, I want to run it because I know it will go well. And I want my work to live on after I die. I'm like, oh, so, I'm like, gosh,
no pressure.
He knew how to get me right. So,
right.
Yeah, and that's when he promoted me too. And I'm just like, but I was that guy, like when he went to promote me in the late 90s, I didn't care. I didn't care about the belt, the rank. I just wanted, most of the stuff I teach right now is the Gracie Jiu Jitsu. I still do the Kempo and the Muay Thai and all the stuff that I've done, but I'm in that. So I always joke and say, I got a 9th degree black belt that hangs in the closet, but most of the time I have my brown belt on. And so I don't know. I think the only time I have the black belt on in the last 5 years is when I go to the karate belt ceremonies. But meanwhile, everybody knows I'm just going to be teaching the jiu-jitsu part. So
right. Yeah. And I'd love to get to talking about, how you got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in just a second. But I want to give a quick shout out to Nelson Gomez and Dana Abbott. Thank you guys for watching and commenting while you guys are watching live. If you have any questions for John, please let us know. Would love to ask your questions as well. But as I'm looking at that again, Ketsugo Ryu, I have a very good friend and instructor that I learned Ketsugo Jiu Jitsu, which is, more of a Japanese stand-up style jiu-jitsu. It was, I started that in the 90s and trained throughout the 90s. Very good friend, Sensei Chris DePalma, learned from Harold Brocious. And I just, so when I'm looking at Ketsugo, I'm like, well, we've got some.
So that's, very connected, because Larry Hilton from Peoria, and, he was black belt in the 60s, right? So I couldn't even tell you all his list of accomplishments and achievements, but Harold Brocious,
yes,
he told me the story about that. Like, he grabbed that name Ketsugo, and they end up becoming friends over it. First it was like, hey, you can't use that name, I'm using it, blah 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 blah. I think it was that kind of a setting, right. And I don't know how accurate I am with that, but they did become friends. So yes, we're kind of in the same circle, right?
Yeah, that's so
and
cool.
That's exactly what it was. It was his hand. So I did Goju Shorei and Kifaru was the Kempo version of that. And then with the BKF Kempo with Donnie Williams and Steve Saunders. So that really took to me in the 90s was the late 80s and the 90s was the striking of Kempo. I really liked it. But I've been doing more like as a kickboxing stance. So I was blending that kickboxing mode, and that's why I think why the BKF with Saunders, if you watched him with Stephen Muhammad now, when you watched him back then, it was more of that, right? And then Larry Hilton, I started studying with as I was like non-instructor at that point, right? I had no instructor really under me at that or I was under, at that point. So he was doing the Kempo and then the Japanese wrist locks, throws, and takedowns. I'm like, oh, it was just a fit.
Well, obviously when you've been around in the martial arts industry for as long as you have, and as long as some others, you kind of get that, you get a glimpse of this and that, and you start pulling things in, and you just kind of blend it, put it together. We add it to our system or our style. But I mean, it really goes back to like what you were saying about not wearing your black belt as often as you wear your brown belt, because you just want to learn something new. You just want to keep learning. And that I think having a white belt mindset of always being able to learn is one of the greatest things about martial arts. And it takes so long for people to understand it. But once you get there, you're just like, oh, okay, I get it. Because the rank is the rank, right? I mean, time's going to keep ticking and time's going to keep going by. But it's what you do with that time and how much you take advantage of what's out there. Because, I mean, there's so much out there for us to learn and continue to learn. And not just about the martial arts, but how to teach the martial arts, how to pass on the martial arts, how to live that martial arts lifestyle. So what I'd love to talk about is how you transition from, a martial arts student, practitioner, into becoming the instructor, right? So how was that for you? How did you get to become an instructor?
Yeah, no, that's a great, because a lot of times I don't talk about that. That's a great question. It's, I was asked when I was going to Lincoln Land, that's a two-year, so it goes back to 82. I was asked by the head instructor, that was an intramural program from the main academy was in Springfield, and they have this satellite program, intramural program out of the community college. 2-year college, the guy that was teaching took off. He was going to take a job in Tennessee after he got that. And then I think I can't remember if I was purple belt or green belt, and I don't even remember which one was first in that style after 5 or 6 styles. But the head instructor of the Springfield school came to me, and the other guy, also his name was John Patterson, and me. And he said, if you guys would teach the programming here at the intramural program, I will give you free membership at the main academy. That's all I needed to hear. I'm in, because here I'm in. I was delivering pizzas wearing a red jumpsuit for Aurelio's Pizza, driving a multicolored, three different colored with fenders and doors replaced on a Vega station wagon that my grandparents handed down. And that's what I was delivering pizzas on. So no money to go to the main academy. So I'm like, I'm in. I always joke, like, I negotiated, I work like 50 hours a week so I could have a $52 a month membership. So but that what really led me into it. And then it was all about competing to me. And we, cut classes and head over to the gym and start sparring early or spar later and then not make the next class, because the classes were being taught. So, and then a year later, I went ahead and asked the instructor, could I open up a school in my hometown, which was just right outside of Springfield, Williamsville. In 83, I opened up there, and I just felt like there was I found me. Right. I always say martial arts found me. I didn't find it. I mean, like me walking down that hallway, it was something that always brought me back. Because reality is after what the 9-year-old, and especially the instructor I had at 15, anybody with any logical sense would have quit. But I'm like, I'm still attracted to this for some reason. So, I ended up teaching, and I just felt good. The feedback was good. People were winning that I was taking to tournaments. And, I think there I found value. I found the self-esteem and the value that I was missing in my life earlier. Martial arts brought that. And so then it was just like, I like to teach, and I still love to compete. I'm competing still today. But teaching is what really, when I started hearing the feedback from the people that I was, when you have a 19-year-old talking about you that's 20, saying how you're changing their life or empowering their life or doing something, you're like, wow, I've never heard anybody say something positive, let alone that.
Right.
So, that was it. And I did that pretty much for 14 years. Ended up working out at I did everything from delivering pizzas to working for a bank as a courier, to loading trucks at UPS for 4 or 5 years. And then ended up as a job, and I ended up in labor relations at the state of Illinois through a couple other jobs before that. But and I always taught part-time, and I would finish my bachelor's degree going to evening classes and weekend classes, and still run my school. And then I decided, and I got hired away by the Teamsters from the state, and I took that job because it was like 2.5 times the pay. So in '96, I'm making like 100. I'm making 6 figures, and I'm a little over 100,000 with a car, and I didn't like it. And at that point, Michael DePasquale, I'd been in the magazine a couple times with Karate International, and he said something about, hey, why don't you come out and audition, learn how to stunt fight? And I did the movie The Cutoff, and just had a blast. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is really what I want to do. So I walked away from that job and put my notice in, and went and rented a place where I could be full time. And I made $5,000 my first year in business. So from 100K plus with expense, with car expense and dinner and credit expense account and everything, to 5,000. And I remember calling Sean Flanagan and Tom, and I can't think of Tom's last name now, it just escaped me, but those are the only 2 people that I knew that were teaching full time. I didn't know anybody that taught full time because there wasn't a lot of that out there, especially in Illinois. And ended up joining a group, and I was like a sponge in that, man. I'm just like, one is I want to eat, so I need to hear what I don't know, right? So I didn't know how to run the school. I thought, I was a great teacher, but okay, well, 50 people isn't going to give me a career. And so I learned how to manage the school and become a better teacher. To understand it. And I think at the end of the day, it's relationships and service. A lot of people think that there's some trickery going on with math, and there isn't. I mean, there's, as running the school, but at the end of the day, if you're not passionate and you're not into it for helping the people and you're not into the service, you're not going to be successful regardless. I mean, there's a lot of the other ways to make better money in the world than there is in martial arts. But if you're in love with martial arts, you can have a really good career, as long as you're in tune with that. So, yeah, I think that was really the big shift. And that kind of was like 96. And then I ended up consulting for that group probably 3-4 years later. So,
wow. Very cool. Now, which group was this? I don't know did you mention
it was United Professionals then. Yeah.
Okay. So that's when United Professionals started.
Yeah, I had no clue. I actually just thought it was a billing company. And this guy Paul Garcia, kept calling me and like, hey, what are you doing? How'd you sign those people up? And I'm thinking, why is this guy interested in what I'm doing? And then he was the consultant and trying to help me. He goes, I can help you do that better. And I said, you can? How? He goes, well, that's what we do. I go, I must have missed that part of the brochure onboarding process. I didn't know that. So I was just reading everything they had. I didn't know they actually had a coach there to help me. So,
and this was mid-90s still.
Yes, mid-90s. Yep.
So you ran the one school from 83 to about 96.
Yeah,
you continued with that school, or you closed that school?
What's that?
Did you continue with that school, or did you close that school?
Yeah, really, it's changed names, but that was, I was teaching part-time all the way and then went full-time with it. So I mean, it changed names after I wasn't doing Shudokan anymore.
Right.
And then I just made it, once I got away from doing more of how I saw the martial arts through the styles I studied, I just called it John Geyston's martial arts. That way nobody could say, oh, he's not with Kempo no more. He's not with, it's my martial arts. And then we rebranded. So really it was that same school. That same school is still going today in Illinois. It's in 2 locations in Illinois, Springfield and in Rochester. And it's now Empowered Martial Arts.
Right. Now, when did you open the second location?
We opened the set. Well, that's interesting because I actually did the second location 2 other times before this, and there was either something where we second time we had a really good takeoff, but we were in a community that there was no commercial buildings that you could rent, and the guy wanted to sell me his building, but he would not rent to me more than 3 nights a week. So we ended up closing that at that time. The first time was completely, I was not prepared for that. I just thought, oh, got the name, people know who I am, we're really good curriculum, people, it just wasn't. I didn't staff training, scaling, phone scripts, and that just wasn't there. And so this one now we're at 2.5 to a little about 2.5, close to 3 years into this one.
Okay. And then you have a third school that you have a partner with, is that right?
Yeah. So now, and so I got those 2 schools in Illinois, and I moved to Tampa. We relocated to Tampa, but mainly because there was a plan in 4 to 5 years, but my children are doing college down here, so it just made more sense to be here. Plus, it's just a lot nicer in Tampa, Illinois. So we've opened up this school. This school is right at the 14th month this in May. And so we've got that, and it's going. So it's about 150 active right now.
Very nice. Very nice. And so you have 2 schools in Illinois and the one here in Tampa, correct?
Yeah. And the plan is to do 3 here in Tampa. So
all right. Now let's talk about jiu-jitsu. When did you get into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Gracie Jiu Jitsu?
So that's an interesting story. I am with a longtime friend of mine from the 80s, and I was at his academy, and I did a Renzo Gracie seminar right about the time that the UFC came out, but I had no clue what the UFC was. So I can't remember if it was before or right after it. But I didn't. If it was right after it, then I didn't watch it. Obviously, I might have been one of the few that didn't. That's why I'm thinking it was a little bit before. It was with Renzo Gracie. So I enjoyed it, but it was one of those things. Like I was that guy that if I saw somebody that, okay, we don't know how to defend against the knife, I'm going to go study Kali. If I watched a karate guy get destroyed by a boxer, I'm going to go start learning how to box better. So I was that guy. So when I went to the Gracie with Renzo Gracie, that seminar, and it was 9 months later in Chicago, I went up there and trained with Hoist. And then I had watched the UFC by that time. And so I dabbled with it, but I really never got into it, right? So in 2006, I'm at my friend's school, and there was 2 blue belts, and they were wanting to do something. Nobody would want to roll with them or anything. I said, hey, guys, I don't really roll, but I'll do it. I'll do Japanese jiu-jitsu, Kenpo. I try and explain that, and I said, so I know locks and stuff like that, and I couldn't do nothing to them. I mean, I couldn't. I didn't know how to pass a guard. I didn't know how to escape bottom, and I'd think, oh, I know arm locks. I know an ankle lock. I know a choke. I'll be fine. And I couldn't do nothing. So immediately we got done, I'm like, show me how you did that again. How would you get out from that? And it's a blue belt, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take jiu-jitsu. And that wasn't easy because nobody wanted to teach, because at that time, 2006, 2007, we had a large school. And I remember one jiu-jitsu guy saying, I don't want to teach you because you're the biggest school in town. If I teach you, you'll steal all my students. So it took me a long time. But 06, 07 is when I started. I was with Premier Martial Arts at that time. And I was doing that long distance basically through, they had like Hermes Franca. They had Rafi Oliveira, who fought in the UFC. So they had some guys on staff, but it was constantly changing. So it took me like 2 years and 9 months to go from white belt to blue belt. And it was just because, and I was terrible. I was probably the worst blue belt that's ever existed when I got it. So, but I just fell in love with it. And then around 2010, 2011, that was more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I had an MMA team. And then someone was telling me that, hey, have you checked out Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? I said, well, I know who, the Gracies are. And then they just, were talking about how it is a traditional self-defense system, and they have all that same stuff that you talk about and you do. And once I hit that, then I was hooked, right? Because it was the rolling and that. So I was started with Henner and Hero, trying to do more of the self-defense. He ended up with Hoist I was with Hoist right at about 9 years. Ended up like the last 3 years, 4 years, I was his Midwest regional person. So helping anybody that went through his course, he would send to me. There was 3 of us, so I was one of them. And it would be to show them how to, structure their class, not necessarily teach the technique. Some of the black belts didn't care for that because I was a purple belt at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, around I think that probably would have been closer to 2016. And then, so I mean, that's it. And then I ended up with J-Dub Wright, who I had known for about 10 years, and he had actually helped me prepare for a tournament years before that. But I felt like my rolling was off, right? So I knew I wasn't getting that through the long distance relationship. I'm still in touch with Hoist. I still hold Hoist in the highest of esteem in regards. And, but with J-Dub was under Hoyler, Gracie. So, that's the route that I kind of went the last 4 years. I just did all my certifications for this school to be Humaita, because my best friend's Humaita back in Springfield. So he's got that territory. Mm-hmm. I couldn't make that one. So I just did the 10-day course in February for my certification with Hoyler, and then just did the annual instructor camp as well. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I'm enjoying it. And last year I started getting out there and competing.
Well, now you were a karate competitor
Yes.
back in the day, right? Let's talk a little bit about your karate career then.
Sure.
Now, were you a point fighter? Were you more of a continuous fighter? Did you ever get into kickboxing? Did you do forms?
All of them.
All right.
And I always credit that one, my instructor. He was big in this fact that if you were going to go to the tournament, you couldn't go just spar. You had to run kata. He didn't care if you looked good. If you won, you needed to run kata because technique was karate. And again, it was just, this thing just, I was just lucky. I did the work. I trained all the time. But I was fortunate that I think I lost my first tournament. That was the only tournament I didn't place in the top 3. But I would run kata. I would run kobudo. And then I would fight. And then they did have the continuous fighting later where they'd have a division, the National Karate Association in the Midwest. They would have both. And I enjoyed that. But I would kickbox. They were doing PK sanctioned kickboxing. Glenn Keeney, Phil Kepp, all those, that group was big in the central Illinois, central Indiana. So all right there within 2 hours. And St. Louis was, a hub of amazing fighters that came out of there. Robert Biggs, obviously Bill Wallace over in Indiana State. So that was a big area. So when I say all the above, I think we fought about 3 times until my instructor just basically stopped saying we're no longer fighting kickboxing, which that was my first turn off to Shidokan, because I'm like, man, I really enjoyed that. And then we did the AAU, what would become WUKO eventually. So I fought in the state, the regionals, and the nationals on that level as well. So. And it was I think all of them were different, right? Because, I remember you had to punch and bring it back. If you didn't bring it back, the point didn't count in the WUKO or the AAU. I can't remember which one. And I got my nose broken, got hit, and my nose ended up being under this eyeball because I hit with the jab, and then and then when I pulled it back, I just watched the punch hit me. So I had my chamber there so I could get the point, and hit me after the break, actually. Wow. So from that point forward, I'm like, you know what? I don't care if it comes back or not. I'm just going to hit him harder. I'm never going to get hit like that again. So,
right.
But I always enjoyed competing. I always did.
Well, I love the fact that, my instructor was the same way. If we went to a tournament, it was like, you're not just a forms guy. You're not just a fighter. Do them both and be well-rounded. And so you've had some experience in all of that. And now you're competing in jiu-jitsu at, 61 years old, right? I mean, that's
I'll be
very admirable to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's my instructor asked me, J-Dub Wright, we were having a conversation. And that was a really interesting how this went down. I moved down to Tampa, so my whole thing was I never had an instructor that I was with weekly, and there's a difference when you have a qualified black belt that you're rolling with and he's watching you roll and he can say, hey man, you're way too much energy here, or you're not doing this or that, because they can feel it, right? That's everything started happening. And when I moved down here, we went back to the long distance thing. And it was, like I said, I've been here. So it was like probably 4 or 5 months after moving here, he asked me, hey, write down what you feel good at, what you feel is black belt level, and what you feel is brown belt level. Because my whole thing was, if I wear that belt, I want to make sure I represent the art. And I didn't get that belt because I'm old. I want the belt because I can do it. Right. And I understand that the 20-year-old is going to beat me, but I should be able to solve the problem. And sometimes rolling with the people that were rolling on a competitive thing, I didn't even understand the problem, let alone a solution to the problem.
Right.
So that was my whole thing. Like, hey, that's why I want to make this switch. And he asked me this question. I said, well, I don't know. I would tell you that my open guard, for example, I would think is like purple belt level, not even brown belt. And then I thought about it, and I went over to the pans, and Professor Brian Emos, who's under J-Dub too, I was there with him, and he said, dude, you should get out there and compete. He goes, that would be your division, man. You would do great. I said, yeah, but Brian, my knees, they told me I need a knee replacement, my hip, my body's beat up. And he goes, all of them are. They're all old, just like your ass is. So just go out there and do it. And you know what? No one said it to me that way. Because I kept thinking, oh, man, I'm beat up. And he goes, all them guys are beat up. They're the same age. You're in great shape. How do you think you're worse than they are? And, I always joked with him and told him he lied because so I wrote J-Dub and I said, I don't know if I'm getting beaten open guard because I'm going against 22-year-olds and I'm 59 or that, my open guard's bad. So I'll know in 3 months. And he goes, well, how are you going to know in 3 months? I said, because I just signed up for the Worlds. And my wife was like, so you don't compete at all, but you're going to go right to the Worlds. I said, well, I figure I'm going to do 2 tournaments before that. But I said, I'm not going out to win. I'm going out there to see how good I am and where I am compared to other people my age. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody in my division was world champions because if you're still competing at that time and you've been in jiu-jitsu, you're competing because you're having success. I became friends with a lot of them, and they would refer to me as a rookie. And I said, I never thought I'd be a rookie at 59 going on 60. But, it was all new to me, and I truly enjoyed it. And I told Brian later, I said, dude, you lied to me because that's the best shape I've ever. I lost like 35 pounds by the time the Worlds were there. I think I fought 2 different weight divisions working my way through the Worlds. And it got me in shape. It was a motivation. But I said, Brian, I'm in the best shape I ever got. And everybody my age has a 6-pack and chiseled chest, dude. You lied. None of them were hurting bad as me. So, but no, I had a great time. And then, I just competed at the Pans in March, I guess. Yeah. So in March, I just competed at the Pans again. So.
Yeah, good for you. Wow, that's amazing. That's, again, very inspiring. You also just received recognition. If I'm not mistaken, something that you posted earlier, you were recognized at the Relentless event as the #1 school.
Yeah, well, they did the top 10, so I don't know if it was like with the top 10 list, I got the #1 spot in that, right? Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, it caught me off guard. I had I've been in the group. I guess my whole theme is you don't know what you don't know. So I always want to be out there learning, and I want to learn and I want to improve. And I never, I had a student of mine just ask me, why I do this, why I do that. And I said, I never, ever have wanted my achievements or my belt ranks to ever tell me, relax, you know everything. Mm-hmm. I always go in every day like, what something new that I can learn. And I had joined Relentless. I think they're an amazing group. It's a little bit different. I've always been involved in a mastermind group since the 90s. I've never not been in one. I may have taken like 6-7 months off between, but I always go to one and I'm looking for what am I weak in and what can they add to that. And with the Relentless group, it's the same way. And I'm at this, I missed the first quarter one because that's when I was with Hoyler doing my 10-day course at the same time. And so they were going, we're doing the top 10. I didn't know they did a top 10. So I'm like, and I only know 3 or 4 of the people in the room because I'm new to the group, maybe 7-8 months. And so I moved my chair so I can watch the stage and I want to see the room. Because when they call people's name, I don't know who that is. I want to see who that is so I can identify. Because then I'm going to go up later and ask them how they did it.
Right.
And, so they get there and they get to the number. They go all the way to the 2 and they go, I'm #1. And now I'm really like moving my chair back to make sure I got the whole room. I'm watching. And then I hear them call my name and it's my name. And I'm like, totally caught off guard. Did not expect that whatsoever. So, yeah, that was huge. And that was based on they were just basically your KPIs as a school owner, right? What's your conversion rate, what your attrition was low, the length of a membership. So they were judging based on all, they're giving them a point quantity to those KPIs, and then averaging them out, I guess, is how they came to that. I don't know the exact way to do it, but that was interesting in simple fact, because it wasn't just based on success of the schools. What are we doing for our students? Service retention, keeping students, keeping them motivated. Because if you got, especially with a newer school, if you got people who are staying with you along, then we know that we're doing something right. Mm-hmm. We know that everybody's going to quit at some point.
Right.
But, we want to keep that. I think we ended our attrition ended up being like under 3% for the quarter. Wow. So
what do you attribute your success in that area? What makes you so successful at keeping students so long and keeping that attrition rate low?
I think I think there's always the technical side of it. Like, what could I do to be better to communicate, our onboarding students during the sensitive time, courtesy calls quarterly. But I think at the end of the day, it always comes back to still caring. It's just care. Just care enough to ask the student, hey, how you doing?
Right.
Is there anything I can do to help you better? Do you feel like you're okay? Or talking to them when they're not, because, karate, we can kick a pad and walk out of there feeling pretty good about ourselves. And I'm not saying one's less than the other, but with jiu-jitsu, when you're rolling, you're getting defeated a lot. Yeah. Because the reality of it is, it's not who's the most athletic. It's the one, if you got someone that less, but a lot of times it's technically understanding, as I said earlier, a problem. So you lose a lot. And I think jiu-jitsu is very easy. You walk out buzzkilled, you walk out there like, oh man, I'm terrible at this. Jiu-jitsu's terrible. The instructor's terrible, or I should be better, and blah, 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 blah. I think it's very easy to get beat up. So I think it's and to lose, it's more in your face losing than it is, maybe if I'm kicking just the pork chop pads that night. And not saying that that's bad, but I'm just saying I think jiu-jitsu, there's a risk of having a much lower self-esteem, and feedback is negative more than it is positive, I guess is where I'm trying to go with that. So I think that's when you got to really, and I do teach a blend. The adult program is pretty much jiu-jitsu. The kids is a little bit of a blend of that. It's not 100% jiu-jitsu, but so I think still caring enough to check in with students, talk to them and ask them and talk to them. And I think that's at the end of the day, man. And that's where you got to like what you're doing. Because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to take time to do that part.
That's right.
You got to care. Like if I'm rolling with you, I'm always going to give you advice, and I'm going to submit you, but then I might slow it down if I feel that I'm way ahead of you. And then I'll walk you through a spot that I see that you're going to, like, hey, back up, just do this. Perfect. Hey, do this, work on between now and then, work on this. Row with so-and-so next and tell them I told you to put you in this position and we'll help you with that position. So, just taking those little extra steps like that. It's about relationships.
Well, and I was going to get back to that because you mentioned this, much earlier on, what we do. Number one, we do it because of our passion for martial arts. And, I've been in the game for a bit and did some consulting for schools. And, a lot of schools get very, focused on the numbers, right? The numbers. And as a business owner, we know how important that is. We have to know our numbers and we have to pay attention to that. But when the students become just a number and we don't have that, that culture of building relationships, things tend to, you almost get used to seeing, okay, well, this number is kind of normal for us and it might fluctuate here and there a little bit, but we're not talking about people. We're talking about numbers, Yes. I love what you said about just kind of asking, like, how you doing? Like, how's life? How's school? How's mom and dad? Like, trying to get to know them. One of the things that is very important and always has been very important is we're born with a certain family, right? We're born with, and then we create a family as we get a little older, right? And then we have our martial arts family. And I think that some schools miss that aspect of allowing their school to become a team, to become a family, because we can only go so far on our own. And we can only go so far to reach our own level of success. But when we start putting our students' success ahead of our own and the success of the team above anything else, man, that's when you see some real growth happening. So my next question to you is, what are some things that you do that really help you build relationships with your team and with your students and within your school?
We do, obviously, a lot of the stuff I just take for granted that most people are doing. So sometimes I downplay when I talk about it, and then somebody, what's an onboarding call? But we do a complete, we do have the text messages and the emails that are automated, but they're automated in the sense that we wrote them knowing this is what we would say. But it's timed, but we still get on the phone. Hey, just wanted to touch base. Hopefully you got my email. What would you say to 3 things that, where are you at with everything? How are you enjoying classes when you start at this and this and this? We listen to you. When you do your intake form, we listen to that and we have it noted in your profile. So when we get on the phone, we go back. Because, when you get, like, let's say, for example, we got close to 350, 400 students in Illinois, 150 here. I may not remember everything you told me on the intro. But I do remember because this is where my focus is at. And it's the fact that I care. But we look at those and we talk to you about those things and ask you where you progress or where you're progressing, where you feel that you're not. And what can we do? Is there anything that I can do that you feel that I could help you with this area more?
Yeah.
Or has those areas shifted? Because the reality of it is when you start something, 90 days later, it can be a completely different thing. I've had so many people come to me and say, I just want self-defense. And guess what? All they do is they go to jiu-jitsu and they roll and they never go to the self-defense class. Well, if things change immediately once they get, because they don't know in the beginning what they don't know.
Right.
We don't know. In our thing, it's not that we change. It's just like, that's more of an interest to me than this is. So it's just making sure that we do all those things. I think we try to do. So, I act like that's normal, and I guess it's not when I talk to people. That's not as normal as you, but
right. Yeah. Well,
I've said this before is I watch school owners who have great rapport with prospects when they're trying to get them in for the intro. And once they sign them up, they don't talk to that person for 2 months. I should be talking to you twice as much as I talked to you before you came in.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, I think the key is constantly asking questions.
Yes.
All the questions that you listed already, how are you doing here? What are 3 areas that you think you can improve on? What are 3 areas that you've improved on since you started?
Yes.
Because I even take for granted sometimes, just making calls when people are absent, right? And how beneficial just getting on the phone with someone and asking a few questions, like, again, how's school going? How's life going? What, because we never know what a student or a family might be going through, right? We're focused on, okay, is everything okay in karate? But so many times that the reason they're not coming to class has nothing to do with how we teach or what we're teaching or what we're getting out of the program. They might be struggling at school. They may have had a death in the family. They have a new baby coming. And again, for me, it goes back to when we treat our students like family and we really care for one another, it just changes the dynamic.
Yes.
And maybe this doesn't work for every school owner on the planet, right? I mean, especially, school owners that might have, 100 schools, 50 schools, 10 schools, 5 schools, it doesn't matter. But that person that's in the school can still, I think, be doing those things and keeping, I guess the best word is keeping tabs, right? Keeping tabs on everybody and knowing what's going on.
Yeah. So for example, we'll get people that pause a membership. Like it's more down here in Florida because there's so many people like my, it's different. I was in Illinois for 41 years teaching in Tampa now for 14 months, I think is where we're at. But it's a different culture. My daughter's junior high that she goes to, 3,000 kids, 18 languages spoken, 6th, 7th, and 8th, 18 different languages. And there's the last summer I was like, we were just starting. We just started like March, April. And then people are putting all their memberships on hold. I had 11 people because they're going to go back to Bulgaria. They're going back to Cuba. They're going to Colombia. They're going, somewhere where they're going back to see their family.
Right.
And okay. So I'm like, let's talk to these people and then document it, scale it. And how can I make this a universal where I'm always in touch with someone during their pause?
Right.
The other thing is people are going to quit, but so many people get upset when someone quits. And I'll see people that I've run into that they will say, "Oh, you've changed my life, blah, blah, blah. You're the best thing since sliced bread." And they see you at the mall, they try to look like they didn't see you and try to avoid you. And always that when I was younger, I took that like, man, why do they not like me? I did everything for them. It's not me. They're embarrassed that they quit.
Right.
So now we even try to stay in touch with you once or twice a year to former students.
Sure.
Because maybe you're not coming back, but we want to let you know we still value you. Do you remember this?
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. And this was a great memory. Man, I hope life is going well. Tell me how your black belt attitude is helping you currently go forward in what you're doing.
Right. Well, isn't social media a blessing in that way? Because people that move, I mean, I can count at least a handful of people that have trained with us. They ended up moving, right? So, I mean, they didn't quit. They moved, right? And now they're training at another karate school. And I get so excited when I can continue to see their progress. And I still try to comment and stay in touch and keep in touch to let them know that, like, hey, you may have started with us, but like you're still going strong and still doing it. And even if they're not training martial arts, to see students that have trained with us and are going on to college, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're starting families, they're having the career that they chose to do. I mean, like all of those successes are by seeds that we planted.
Yes.
And now, they're reaping the benefits. That's a pretty powerful thing too, to be able to look at that and see that as well.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing we all lose sight of. I always joke about our industry. Especially like if you've ever been a part of a consulting group, a mastermind group, and you're a brother and you're the greatest thing ever, right? And then as soon as you leave and go to another group, they don't talk to you anymore.
Right.
And I always think about that. I'm like, we do that to our students. Really, that was when I had somebody that I thought I was close to just like no longer talk to me because I wasn't paying a monthly tuition check to them. And I'm like, how many students think I'm that way? We got to start talking to former people. Until they tell us to leave, I don't like you, don't ever write me again. But that hasn't happened. No. They're appreciative that you're reaching out. But, we have a young lady named Marley. She really struggled with her black belt test probably 6 years ago. And I mean, struggle. Like we do a 16-week pre-test. And she struggled. She would do private lessons after every quarterly exam that you had to pass. On that way to the final, because she would fail them. So she was destined to fail the black belt. She passed the black belt. And then they quit. And, but she's doing amazing because this girl was shy. She never would speak up for herself. Now she's playing volleyball. She's doing amazing with it. Her academics are, that's martial arts. To me, that's truly what martial arts is. Mm-hmm. That's truly what it is. And I take that, I think, from my childhood, that all those things that were holding me back, martial arts gave me the answer for. And then sharing that, I get to share that back.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, listen, I want to thank Nelson Gomez, Dana Abbott, Adam Jackson, Austin Simmons, Rick Christie, and we got a couple of Facebook users. I apologize I don't see your name, but thank you guys for your comments. And this is your last chance to ask any questions. If you have any questions for us before we go, because we're going to wrap up in the next minute or so. But would you like to add anything else? You have any final thoughts that you want to give everybody before we finish today?
Somebody asked me the other day, like, what would be, you always get those tough questions. Like, if you had one thing to say to a child that had no self-esteem, what would you say? And I'm like, wow, I don't know. I have to think about that one. I think the biggest thing is we all want to be I always say this about our students, every child wants to do right. And if they're not being acknowledged, they're going to do something to get acknowledged. We want it to be the right thing they get acknowledged for, but even if they do wrong. So I think it's always like and I say that to say that I think the number one thing that holds us adults back is we're worried about offending somebody, worried about being criticized. And listen to your heart and go with it. Just go with what's in your heart, because what's in your heart is there for a reason. And don't worry if someone likes it or dislikes it. I got 2 people that were with me in the 80s that don't even speak to me now, and they're upset that I got promoted to 9th degree. Well, first, I didn't ask for it. Second of all, I don't run around talking about it. But, that's okay. But I'm not going to apologize for doing what I've done. I'm going to continue to pursue my dreams, my direction. I haven't done anything bad with it. So, I think is just believe in yourself, go for it, and don't worry about what people say. And if they say it, do it twice. It's harder because you're making people upset because you're doing stuff they can't do. So keep going.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I think that's, just believe in yourself and don't worry about the criticism. Be open to the mentors who want to say, hey, I need to reel you back in a little bit. But there's a difference between someone that you're trusting to guide you opposed to just a generic person that wants to say something. We live in a negative world, and I think it's very difficult to be positive. And that's the 2 books that I've been working on. And I've been working on these books for like 20 years. I just didn't know what direction I wanted. So I've been working on content, I should say, for 20 years. And now it's like I want to write one for adults on the power empowering, the tools of empowerment. And then, with the kids, it's just about being you, being the best you. And so I'm on an 8 to 12-year-old version of that now. And both the adult one is done. The kids is about 90% done. And then I'll be looking at all that on how can I get those published and out there. But really, I'm writing them for my students.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'd love to read it when you get it done.
Thank you. And I'll
awesome.
get you a copy of both of them.
I appreciate it. Well, you said something very cool, and we'll end with this because I had a coach that told me almost verbatim in what you said is go with your heart and you'll never be wrong. And so Coach Steve, if you're watching, that was always his end. Whenever we would ask him a question, go with your heart, never be wrong. No matter what it was, that was the answer. So, hey, I appreciate you being on the call today and sharing your stories and your just your motivation, your inspiration, and education as we go through this process of martial arts and life. And I want to invite everybody to please share this video and subscribe on YouTube at Master Motivation Podcast. I'm looking forward to having many more great guests. But Mr. Geyston, thank you for your time today. And we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it for today. Go out and have a great week. We'll see you real soon.